Hello, my name is Victoria Keddis, and you're joining us here on In the Know. In the Know is an initiative brought together by the BC Partners for Mental Health and Substance Use, and it's funded by Provincial Health Services and BC Ministry of Children and Family Development. Again, my name is Victoria, and I'm joined here together today with Jen Russel, a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and Lucke, a young adult with lived experience. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
So I think about the things we're going to be talking about today, and we're talking about judging ourselves and judging others. And I think it's really important to assume and to judge, but I also think it really gets in the way of caring, connected relationships and working well together. And in order to do that, we need to be more mindful of those things. So as much as it affects those, it also really impacts how we show up. And I think about how we show up as being one of those things that we have control over, but the things that happen before and after any of our interactions can really change that. So being judged and having assumptions made of us really gets in the way. So as much as it can affect how we show up, it can also be really easy to slip into judgment and making those assumptions when things are going not so good. And when things are hard, I think we're really quick to judge ourselves a lot first. As a parent, I know that what that looks like for me is I may be showing up really overprotective, over-involved, and some people sometimes think showing up absent. And talking with lots of other families and what it's like for them, this is very much how they feel it looks for them and what others are judging about them. And what it sounds like is that as parents, we may be loud and demanding and impatient. But what it really feels like for us is that we are scared for our child's well-being. And I know that in listening to other families, that's a big thing for them, is that they're really afraid for their children's well-being. So when I'm thinking about that, Jen, I think, what is it like for you when things aren't going well? What does it look like, sound like, and feel like for you?
You know, in hearing you talk, I think it's really similar for me too. As a psychiatrist, I'm doing this work because I really care and I want people to get better. Mm-hmm. And when things aren't going well and they're difficult, I'm scared too because I want them to go well. Mm-hmm. I think as a doctor or clinician, we can see the same things. People getting like agitated or frustrated or withdrawing and not, returning calls as quickly. So I try to really be aware of that, thinking, okay, this is really hard right now. What can I do to support the situation so that it turns a corner?
Thank you. What about you, Cass?
What does it look like to...
When things aren't going well for you, what are some of the things that people might see or hear? And what do you feel when things aren't going well?
I think for youth it's similar to you guys as well, just because we're all human. But for me personally, like when things aren't going as well, like I shut down, and the communication that I really need to maintain to keep my mental health strong with the support systems around me, it really wavers, and I kind of stop doing that. And that's pretty much what it looks like.
I love that there's this commonality, a common ground, even when we're not having a good time. It's nice to know it brings out that human side of us, and I know that's really important to you. So what do you wish people knew about you when things weren't going well? What would make things go better if they knew that?
I guess for me, recognizing that I am human, mm-hmm. and that I really do have good intentions. Like I want to make things better, but sometimes the situations are really hard. Mm-hmm. I think the more that we're able to be on the same team, so that it's like all of us working together to solve a problem rather than against each other, can be helpful. And that's important to me. And that I make mistakes too, and it's okay to bring them up and talk about it with me, because often that actually builds the relationship. Even though it can be a really difficult conversation, it can make things stronger over time.
So I know that in talking with you in the past, one of the things you wanted people to know, though, is that although I might be having a hard time and things are hard, doesn't mean you have to take care of me as a service provider or as a healthcare provider in that aspect. So where does that play out for you in that, when you know that being human when you're in a relationship that's professional. How does that play out when you might cross that boundary of letting some of that humanness leak out in a way that might feel like the parent all of a sudden is not seeing you as a professional, but now seeing you as that human in front of them?
You know, it's a fine line. I think there's a difference between acknowledging that things are difficult or that things could have been done better and, you know, disclosing everything that's happening. Right? So acknowledging like a mistake or that things are hard, I think can help the relationship. That doesn't mean it's up to the parent or the youth to make those things better or to make them less hard. Sometimes that's the work. You know, I have my own support team that I can go to get that support. But my goal is really to be there in the hard moments for the youth and the parents.
Awesome. Thank you. And what about you, Cass? What do you wish people knew that when things were hard, that if they knew that, things would go better?
I think that I wished that my family knew that I didn't blame them for the position I was in. And I think a lot of times it was difficult to realize that I wasn't in the position I was in at any fault of my own either. So I think just a common understanding that it's a hard situation for everybody and that they're on my team. They're not on my mental illness's team. We're all fighting against that together. I think that would have made things a little bit easier for everybody, especially because there are times when a youth is very ill, like when I was very sick, I felt an attachment to the mental illness because it did provide a sort of comfort and to be able to understand that they're fighting with me against this thing that is not actually providing me that comfort. It's actually taking me away from what's healthy, and that there are other like healthy coping strategies that will make things better for everybody. Would have been very helpful to communicate, for sure.
Wow. And when you think of some of those healthy strategies that would have worked, what were some of the things that could have been done that would have made things be easier?
I think that it was really difficult to get away from the very tight-knit relationship that I had with my family, because we come from a family that feels each other's everything. We're very close, and whenever there were hard times, we'd always want to comfort that person and make that go away, whatever it took. And I think sometimes with a mental illness, you can't do that right away, at least not on your own. And so it became a little bit desperate sometimes and unhealthy for everyone. And I think what was really helpful was when my family was able to step back and let me feel my emotions and process my emotions and figure out how to communicate with them myself, rather than them kind of taking a guess at what was going on and taking a guess at what I needed. I was able to really tell them what I needed. That took a lot of work, though.
I bet.
But it was very worth it.
Thank you for that. I think as a parent, one of the things I wish people knew is that they don't know my whole story, which I imagine many of you, both of you feel as well. And when they can suspend judgment of me and just see me for the fact that I'm doing my best and that I'm working really hard to do this better, and what I really need in the hard times is their empathy and their compassion and their kindness. Because I'm already beating myself up enough for all of us. I don't need them doing it for me too. So we talked a little about when things go badly. Some of the things you talked about were some of the strategies that we can use. I know for me as a parent, I really strongly believe in first and second and endless chances, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I have a son who has been over the years not able to articulate a whole lot, but recently he's been able to tell me some hard things that as a parent I was doing that were causing harm. I was really quick to be able to try and make things better rather than just letting him have all those feelings. but I didn't know the harm that was doing. And again, great intentions, but to be able to have him tell me those things and then know that I had another chance to do it differently the next time has changed our relationship immensely, because he felt safe now to tell me those things, knowing that I wasn't going to brush over really quickly and make things better. Not necessarily for him, but thinking I was. What about the strategies that you have used or would like to be able to use when those things have gone not so hard, when something feels a little broken and you want to be able to get to that place where you can still be in relationship together? What about you, Jen? What are some of the things that are important to you?
I guess a few strategies that I find helpful is, first of all, recognizing that things feel a little broken, or that they're not as where I would hope they would be.
Yeah.
Often when I'm in a place like that, I'll actually take a break. And that gives, I think, everyone a chance to kind of cool down. It gives me a chance to collect my thoughts. Sometimes I can consult with somebody else about how I could do things differently. And then really holding, self-compassion for myself and for the people involved in the stuck situation, recognizing that we're all people, we're all doing the best we can. And so kind of coming back with that intention, or really regrounding myself. And like you, I believe in chances after chances after chances. And I try to hold the hope that repair is possible and that things can get better. And from my experience, sometimes the toughest situations actually end up being the best in the end. Like out of the conflict comes a lot of resiliency and health. And sometimes those hard situations need to happen to kind of get to a new place. So I try to embrace it with that perspective, rather than getting stuck in the negativity, that this is part of the journey, and looking beyond the wall to where we could be in time. I think, having done this for a few years now, I've actually had situations where we've been in really bad places and things have turned out really great. So I think one of my jobs as a clinician is to hold that hope, because the young person or the parent might not have that perspective. I tell them that, but they haven't lived, the person that was in hospital, and then I get the graduation photo 3 years later, right? And I've experienced that. I've witnessed it. So I think it's my job to bring that when things are stuck.
Can you take us through a little walkthrough of what some of those things that were done along the way to take that relationship from a place of feeling really hard and that things weren't going to go well, to a place where they did become the beautiful in the end, that beautiful all the way along, but that place where you switched and turned to another place to get you there?
I wish I could say they were beautiful all the way along, but I don't believe that's realistic. Or when people think of recovery, that shouldn't be the goal. I think the places where it's really worked is when someone on the team, and that could be the healthcare professional, it could be the youth, it could be the parent, is able to put words to, we're feeling stuck, or we're feeling like things aren't going well, and that there's been an openness for people to take risks and try to keep working through it. Those are really courageous discussions to have. And I can, as a healthcare professional, it's hard to have those. It's hard to hear when I've done something, just like as a mom. It's hard to hear. It's hard for me to hear that I said something that maybe hurt someone or was offensive, because that wasn't my intent, but that doesn't mean that wasn't the impact. So being able to have those difficult conversations while holding good intent, I think, does lead to stronger relationships down the road.
Yes. You've shared a lot of really personal things as far as how your family interacts and things. When you think about when things have gone wrong and the steps that you would love to have taken or have taken to be able to have things go better, do you have an example of a story that would help guide us through what was done that made things go better for you?
Yeah, there were a lot of times where things went wrong, and things didn't happen that I think could have made things a lot better. But I think that the time that had the biggest impact was when my mom realized that she needed to not feel all of my emotions, and needed to just let me feel what I needed to feel. And there was one point where I was just having a bad day, and instead of coming up to me and just like hugging me or letting herself escalate, she really kept herself grounded and tried to keep herself as calm as she could and just listen. And she really gave me space to open up about what I was going through, what I was experiencing. She actually ended up asking me to tell her what was going on in my head, and I just said like everything that was going on in my head, and we went through what was realistic and what wasn't, and that just opened up the conversation for us to be very transparent with each other. Not even just when I'm having a hard time, like if she's having a hard time, I feel now very confident in saying to her, like, hey, I can tell that you're like feeling a bit escalated, like what's going on, like do you want to talk about it? And we can have that conversation now, and it just made us a lot closer. Yeah.
Wow. It sounds like you get really seen and heard that way. It's not just the good, easy parts, but all of you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Can I add something?
Most definitely.
I was going to add to that. When things have been stuck and the meeting is over and that stuck feeling, kind of lingers, I want to encourage people that it's okay to have another meeting. So sometimes it's helpful for me because I might not be aware of what someone else is feeling or thinking. So getting a phone call or an email saying, can we revisit some of the things from last week or last night? Sometimes even having a heads up so that I can also then think of, like, reflect on the meeting. But it's not over. And, just like any relationship, like with you and your mom, one with a doctor is, we learn as we go together. So it's okay. I think it's okay to write things down or whatever works best for you to try to communicate those things. I think that's working. Yeah,
and I think that's really important for young people and families to hear, because so often we think we have our appointment and it's done and we have to wait for the next one, or we have to not have a next one because it was a specialist that had a very short window of our time. So the impact of knowing that, I think, is a great gift to everyone being able to hear.
Can I just add to that? I think it's hard as a specialist because I know there's such tight resources or timing, but if something has happened in the appointment that is upsetting, I think most healthcare professionals would want to know so that they have a chance to respond. Yeah. It might not mean that you can have like a whole other meeting, like depending on the situation, but often like a phone call or, checking in can clarify things and again, build to repair. So
thank you for clarifying.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does.
I would not want someone to be feeling hurt and offended for months, because I think that just snowballs without me knowing.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know.
Can I also add one more thing? So when you were talking, I was just thinking about a memory I had where a few of my clinicians were very aware that there was a standstill happening in my recovery, and everyone was very confused about what was happening, and I was honestly not even sure myself. And I think that one of the benefits of giving people that space, like my mom did, and I think like my clinicians probably did as well, without me really noticing, is that it let me kind of hit rock bottom on my own and feel that and realize that I needed to be the one to make a switch, because in this situation, it's not always true for the youth, because a lot of times they have no control about what's going on with them. But in this situation, it was very important for me to know that people weren't always going to be fixing me and doing everything for me, that I needed to build that strength up myself to be able to want to fully get better. And so that getting that space really allowed me to just step up and continue to step up after that.
Wow, thank you. I know you had mentioned recovery is always possible. When you think of that, what does that mean to you in context of what you've just said?
Yeah, I think that recovery for some people is definitely possible. And I think that's really important to keep at the forefront of your mind. But I also think that it's just as important to keep forgiving yourself if things aren't getting there as quickly as you would like them to, or as you've seen them get, or you've heard them get to. Everyone goes at their own pace. Everyone's mental illness is different. Everyone deals with them differently. Everyone deals with different things throughout their life that might trigger them in a different way. So recovery is just such an individualized journey, and I think that it's also important to remember that it's okay if you're never where you were before your mental illness, because you've grown so much since then, and every time you get knocked down by your mental illness, you're becoming more resilient and you're becoming stronger. And so even if it's not something that you're going to be able to get over completely, you're able to manage it. And I think it's important to honestly be thankful for the lows, because it really makes you appreciate those highs, right?
What a strong place to come from. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in talking about judgment today of ourselves and others, I know that judgment is one of those things we all do. We all have this part of us that judges. It's what we do with it next. And I'm thinking of your role in being a healthcare provider, is that it's always different. Judging is something you have to do as part of your work. In that aspect of you're looking at someone, meeting them in a small window of time and having to make some calls. So what does judgment feel like when it's something that's having to be done, and where is it done in a helpful way, so that we don't look at judgment as always this thing that's doing harm, but it's also something that can help us. So where does that play out for you when we talk about judging ourselves and others?
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because on one hand, I think assessment or judging can be really helpful. Like if you find out that you have an illness and there's a treatment plan, I think people want that judgment, right?
Yeah.
To find out, hey, there is something wrong and there is something that can be done. That's largely helpful. I think where it isn't helpful is when we start to use those judgments in a negative way or in a blaming way. I think usually it's a defense when things aren't going well and we're feeling stuck or scared, and we use terms in a not, very helpful way. And we probably all know when that's happening. One thing that's really influenced me has been the development of trauma-informed practice, where really looking at what's the underlying meaning behind the behavior. So if a parent is like getting really upset and outraged, why are they getting upset and outraged? And because they care, right? Like the parent that's, mad and angry is a scared but loving parent, right? And I think it's really important to look at the meaning or the intention behind, and really assuming good intentions and using judgment that way. Like assuming someone is loving and scared, you're going to respond very differently than if you assume someone's just being annoying.
Very true.
Right? So it's really checking, my own reaction. And sometimes it's important to take those few minutes and take a deep breath and go, okay, why is this person so upset? What could be going on? What's happened in the past that may or may not involve me that's contributed to this moment?
Thank you. And I think that's one of those really important pieces. As we all come together, we can all do a whole lot better when we're stopping and suspending our judgment. The one thing I really want to be mindful of, though, is that in any of the FamilySmart practice skills we talk about and the things we're saying today, young people that are struggling with their mental health, we never need to have them show up differently. How they're showing up is perfect, and we need to meet them where they are. And we need to be the ones suspending our judgment and assuming those good intentions always, so that the young person gets to be seen and heard for all that they are as well. So.
And I would say the same for the family member too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I haven't met a single parent in my whole career that hasn't had good intentions and wanting to be there for their child.
Thank you.
Right? So I think, those are principles we need to hold at every single encounter.
Yes.
Even the parents that don't show up, I think are often worried that them being there might make the situation worse, or they don't know. Like there's a lot going on, as you said, in absenteeism.
Yeah.
And really sitting in a place of wonder and thinking what is really going on for this parent, I think is way more helpful than coming down from a negative, blaming. There really isn't any room for blame.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Right?
And I think that sums it up as far as all of this, is that instead of assuming and having those judgments that we have, having a whole lot more space for wonder of what's going on. What is the bigger picture? And there's always something more to the story that we don't see. So thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. It's wonderful to hear some skills that we can bring forward. Again, we know we judge and we do those things, but it's what we do with it next. So I wish you all kindness to yourselves as you are able to look at suspending judgment when you're in those relationships. So if you're watching this in a group or you're watching it at home, may you find time to reflect on the things that matter to you and make a difference in how you can show up and suspend judgment of others. Again, one of the things that you can do for us to help in our Future in the Knows is to go and fill out that feedback form so that you can share with us what matters to you. And also know that there's a whole library of In the Knows that you can go and watch on many different topics. So enjoy your day, and thanks for sharing some of your time with us. Take care.